So welcome to the ArchAdemia Big Employment Forum. Um, and the purpose of this event is we have been, for want of a better word, we've been getting battered with applications to our practice and queries about getting a job through ArchAdemia. So we've been getting it from both sides. And if if I can be truthful, and I will touch on this shortly with my slides. So we've each got a presentation prepared. If I can be truthful, we still do see a lot of common mistakes, and I personally think if you take the advice from everyone today, I think if you really do embrace the advice, I think you will set yourself apart quite comfortably. So the event aims to pull together a range of tips from speakers of various experience, backgrounds, and viewpoints. I think say that this group of people is handpicked. I think everyone's got a slightly different perspective. We've got different age groups, different levels of experience, and I think that different perspective should give as broad a piece of advice during this session as possible, and it's all with the goal of enhancing your odds of gaining employment. Although we're not guaranteeing instant success, but what we can assure you is the obviously I've seen everyone else's presentations, and some of the ideas are absolutely fantastic. So what we're trying to do today is firstly improve your overall approach to job applications. That is a key part of my presentation, which is the approach, and then things like bolstering your personal brand, elevating your portfolio, CV, and cover material. You'll learn how to put your best foot first and get ahead of an ever-growing competition. And what I mean by that, this is something when I do one-to-one sessions in here, there is this unfortunate thing that happens in the UK anyway. I can obviously only speak from my own experience. Is that there are a percentage of graduates that don't get a job each year, and that becomes this kind of rollover effect. So the competition does grow. But again, as I say, I'm confident that from what you'll learn today, you'll set yourself apart. So we've already done this bit, which is just warming the chat up. So I wanted to just ask everyone where they're from. Equally, I wonder whether can I just. Oh yeah, there we go. So I just wanted to open the chat so I can see it. Equally, what I am interested in, and this is the thing I'm pinching from David Brazil, is the what is your role? Because I was amazed with the members of ArchAdemia. We've got like set designers, project managers. I was speaking to a guy the other day who used to dress Apple stores worldwide, and he joined ArchAdemia to learn more ArchViz based stuff. So just if you would, I'm not going to wait for anything, but if you would just please let us know what your kind of current position is. Is everyone a student, or is everyone an assistant and they want to move jobs, all that sort of stuff? So just if you would populate the chats just to give us a little bit of context. And then if I may, but I actually don't want to give too big of a sell, because we're not here for this today. But just so you know, if you're not aware of ArchAdemia, we are an all-encompassing training platform ran by RIBA Chartered Architects, Studio RBA, which is my own practice. And we are for architect students, interior designers, and ArchViz artists. And the main thing is trying to build everyone's practical skill set to improve confidence, well-being, and career trajectory. Oh, right. So, what you'll be hearing today is roughly 5 topics. I think we may digress a little bit, but 5 topics from each speaker. I'll go first, and then we'll be handing over alphabetical order by first name. So I'll pass you over to Chris after myself. And my 5 topics are, and I will elaborate, is around eliminating silly mistakes, making your submission specific, using alternative media such as web and 3D printing, demonstrating broader skills, and using some sort of innovation to grab attention, and a little extra, slightly controversial tip at the end as well. So we receive applications like this, and if the person who sent this is on this call, I do apologise. I'm not trying to dig anyone else. This isn't uncommon. The the silly mistakes that we see day in, day out, we probably get about 5 or 6 job applications a week, and first things first is it's not addressed to anyone, and we are a small practice with everyone's on the website, so it's not hard to at least address it to someone. And that is an important thing when getting someone's attention. Almost come across like you know the person, kind of thing. So make sure you address it to a person first and foremost. And on this example that I'm showing, there are clear changes in font style, which is obviously a reminder to that person about, oh, I must change that practice name, or I must change that. And so it comes across so obvious. So please make sure that there's nothing wrong with a template, but please make sure that it's not obvious that it's some sort of template. Please make it specific. As I've mentioned, make sure it's addressed to someone. And this cover letter, personally, I find a little too lengthy. I am very busy trying to juggle 2 businesses, so I'm not reading through all that really. So the suggestion is keep it a bit smaller, the body of text, and try and grab the attention with something a little more unique than what I mentioned in here, which is just a PDF attachment. Again, as an employer, I get tons of PDF portfolios. So for something to grab the attention, just another form of media, even a video or something, you can do like unlisted videos on YouTube that you can just send privately. Just think outside the box when it comes to that initial approach. Then the thing that we see a lot of, or a lack of, is about making it specific. So again, nothing wrong with a template, because you can't write 100 different letters. I understand that, but make sure that you've got the directors' names personally. You address it to them, and make sure, and I do appreciate it was done on the previous letter, the example, but it was just a bit obvious, that I say, with the change of font style. Make sure that you're calling out specific projects, but instead of just saying, oh, I like that project, or what have you, explain why you like that project and what you could have contributed to that project. And that's how you really, knuckle down on that kind of specificity. Explain the benefits of hiring you outside of the norm. So I although we teach it, I don't really want to hear that you're good at visualizations and all that sort of stuff. I think pretty much everyone is now. It's got to be something a little more unique. Could you bring work into a practice? Are you particularly good at presenting? Are you particularly good at maybe planning policy or something like that? And I will touch on that a little bit more in a following slide. Explain why you want to join that practice in particular. And sometimes we do get asked, what practices should you work at, what are good and bad practices, and all that sort of stuff. So if you want to follow up with that, drop me an email at adam@archademia.com, and we can have maybe a private conversation about that. But the reason I mention good practices is that I know people who've worked at those practices, and they say it's a good environment, and the projects that they're working on are contributing positively to maybe that city's skyline. They've got a good eye on sustainability, inclusivity, things like that. So you can really elaborate on those topics, and further making your application more specific, and introduce the application with something eye-catching. So one of the best applications I've seen, I wasn't the employer in this situation, I was just an architect at the last practice. One of the best applications I've ever seen was someone arranged for the delivery of a newspaper, which was it was the CV, it was the application, but the entire submission was written like it was a tabloid. So the headline was like, your next best, employee, or your next best part 2, or whatever. And then when they were running through projects, the project was being written as if it was being reported on. It was so clever, and even everything down to the paper, like it was actual newspaper paper. So it was just so clever. So they're the little tricks, I think, that make it eye catching and it stays in the memory. And I want to kind of just touch on the memory aspect, because we're not always employing, but when it comes around to employing, we will have people in mind. And when you make something eye catching and you make something memorable, you'll instantly be top of a few practices lists. And the person who I mentioned earlier about the guy who's a UI UX designer, and he was for Apple for however long, is this chap, and you can sort of see the Apple inspiration on his website. So I asked his permission if he didn't mind me using this, because one thing I've never seen, I must admit, now this might seem an obvious tip, but I've never seen it in an application, is the portfolio being presented in a web-based format. So 4 places that I would recommend you visit to create a very quick, very easy portfolio are either Behance, Adobe Portfolio, Squarespace, or Framer. And Framer is what this website example has been built on. Very, very easy. They are site builders, and it just gets everything across. And you can see there, using Steve as an example, he's got a little bio on himself, and then as you scroll down, you can see all his work. For me, if someone sent me a website like this, it doesn't just present the work, it shows a different level of thinking, which I think is important in architecture. It allows you to get your personality across, with an About Me page, but there's more you could do with that. As I mentioned, you could do some sort of introductory video. It allows you to create a consistent project area. So what I would like to see from an application, again, from an employer's perspective, I would like to see a consistent way of presenting projects, starting with narrative, then concept, then design development. How have you arrived at a design? That's so important in real world practice. Technical aspects, but on that, what I would say is I'm not too strict on technical knowledge, because I don't think you really should be expected to have too broad of a technical knowledge when you're a graduate. So I wouldn't worry too much, but it doesn't hurt to show a little bit. And then some nice polished visuals, because they don't hurt. And then you can add interactive elements on the website, things like walkthroughs, little downloads, maybe like you could download your CV, or an extension of your portfolio, and obviously other ways of getting in touch. And then, in terms of alternative formats, another impressive application I've seen. Now, I must admit, this is budget allowing, because this isn't cheap, but I've seen people deliver, or have delivered through a courier, a physical model in a presentation box, and in the presentation box has got this little. It's not an iPad, because that'd be ridiculously expensive, but it is kind of like a very small screen, and in that is just a little, what they call like a show reel of that person's work, and it was absolutely phenomenal. And again, things like that would just, I mean, I would almost be like, let's find the budget to employ this person, because that would just be so impressive. And again, with Steve's permission, have a look at his website, stevequayle.me, because I think it's a great example of what I'm talking about. Then number 4 is demonstrating broader practice skills. So in real world practice, sadly, good design contributes to about 10% of a project's success. The other 90 is basically dealing with people, whether that's consultants, planners, what have I said there? Clients, lay, and expert each have the pros and cons. Suppliers, contractors, so on and so on. And I must admit that it's a tricky thing to demonstrate, but if you can somehow demonstrate this kind of soft skill set, and again, maybe a video is a way of doing it, or maybe contacting the practice and asking for an opportunity to maybe present your portfolio. That's not a bad way of maybe getting that confidence across. But as architects, we're always selling something, whether it's an idea, a project. Sometimes we actually sell failed projects to other developers. So you're always selling something. So I say I've never seen it done before. So really consider how you can get that sort of stuff across. And then the last of my main chunk of presentation is some sort of innovation that can streamline the practice. Now I'm going to use a bit of an easy example here because it's the only one that I've got applicable, which is a few years ago when we were starting out, we'd never heard of Lumion. We're always from like a SketchUp and V-Ray background, and a prospective part two who applied told us that we should be using it, and if we employed him, it would revolutionize the way we visualize things and so on and so on. And to be fair, it did. It really helped us accelerate how we were presenting concepts, how we were testing designs, because again, it was the first I'd ever seen of real-time rendering software and all that sort of stuff. So it was absolutely brilliant, and you could export little 360 views and all that sort of stuff. So it 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 pretty much got this guy the job. It was when we were employing, we were looking for two graduates, and it put this guy top of the list because he just demonstrated not just the skill set but how it applied to practice. So using that as just as a bit of an example, consider how you can bring innovation and streamline that practice. So what I've said here is that AI is an obvious one at the minute. How can you use AI to streamline a certain process? So if I can be completely honest, I've been trying to use Mid-Journey to speed up the early concept stages of a project, and I'm getting nowhere with it. So if someone maybe would help me with using that and saving me maybe those early stages, when there's nothing more frustrating when a design is in flux and you're constantly changing 3D models and all that sort of stuff. So that's an example. Alternatively, there could be a way that you use a piece of software in an innovative way. For example, I'm aware that there are plugins for Revit that automatically sheet drawings up and automatically plot them, things like that. We only use Navisworks sparingly in our practice to detect clashes. We only really use it on large scale projects. So for someone like our practice, who we fancy ourselves as being quite techy, we've still got plenty of gaps that people could fill. So make sure that you're building that into your submission. And actually, I think you could even use it as a bit of an opener. There's plenty of practices out there that are nowhere near as tech savvy as we are, and I think you could quite easily blow them away with some sort of innovation. And then my last little cheeky one is, and I want to qualify this by saying I never ever encourage free work. I rue the day that someone said, I'll do you that appraisal for free, because it watered down every architect's fee forever. But there's nothing wrong with, if you are struggling, I would say, is offering a couple of weeks internship. We have employed staff on the back of that, where you almost make yourself invaluable by appearing at that practice for a couple of weeks. But at the very least, and from our experience, when people come away from us with a couple of weeks experience, we make sure that we say to them, if you're applying to practices, let us know, and we're more than happy to put a reference in. So that does carry a bit of weight then as well when you're submitting applications in future. So as I say, wouldn't encourage free work, but if you're struggling, it does get the attention of employers if you say, look, I just want to get my head in the door. I just want to learn the difference between study and practice, and I'd love to just get see behind the curtain. And 9 times out of 10, when someone asks us that, we do take them up on it. So a little recap before I pass you over to Chris is, the key thing I want you to take away from my presentation is, get the basics right, and you'll be amazed how many people don't. Be specific. Don't send a PDF attachment. Send anything else, because again, you'll set yourself apart. Demonstrate practice and soft skills. Come with an innovation, and if all else fails, offer some form of internship. So there's the running order for the next speakers, and I shall pass you to the lovely Chris Simmons.
Right. Hopefully you can hear me.
Yeah.
Okie doke. So yes, I'm Chris Simmons, senior architect, as it said on there. I'm just going to share my screen. Right. Hopefully you can see an incredibly handsome man drawing.
Yeah, it's spot on.
Cool. Okay, so my name is Chris. I am an architect, illustrator, and educator is the sort of tagline I go by. I am an associate director at Squire and Partners. So Squire and Partners are an architectural practice based in Brixton. We are, I think, something like the 10th biggest practice in the UK. So one of the sort of a prominent practice in London, particularly. We're based in Brixton, so the image you can see is where I am at the moment. So our department store, which is the building on the bottom of the image, is the old was a sort of dilapidated building when we took it on 6 years ago, and it became our home. We've converted it. Done sort of roof extensions. We've let out the ground floor, and we sort of let out some of the building to other sort of creative, other architects, other interior designers. Similarly, the building to the top of the page is a shared workspace building that we've constructed in the last couple of years, which again is a sort of it's a CLT frame. Brick clad building, and again that's sort of for other creatives. As a practice, we're very much in sort of high-end residential and office buildings. We do lots of sort of shared workspaces, stuff like that, and obviously with the way the London market is going, a lot of our work is based on existing buildings. And looking at kind of creative ways to reuse them and add to them and bring new life to them. I've been at Squire and Partners for 10 years, starting as an architect. Alongside this, I do freelance illustration. So I've got a company called Drawn, which basically produces illustrations for other architects and sort of graphic design things for CPD providers and manufacturers. And I kind of include that because drawing is kind of my way into architecture. So that was how I, came into architecture as a kid. I was always kind of interested in drawing and in DT, things like that. And drawing is kind of, my kind of basis of becoming an architect and kind of what I'm known for. And then I run a sort of mentoring platform called Architects Instruction. So, active on social media and things like that. Trying to, support you guys and help improve careers in architecture and try and support people in their careers how I was kind of supported and highlighting the kind of importance of mentoring and things like that. And similarly run, different sort of things within our practice to support younger professionals in the practice and, improve our sort of social value and sustainability outside of the practice. So when Adam asked me to kind of be involved in this, it's quite difficult to, get down to 5 points, but I think the 5 key ones for me, I'll start with systems. So it's something I've spoken about quite a lot online, is about treating your kind of job hunt seriously. So treating it like a design project, making a plan, making a program, kind of thinking about it, excuse me, as you would, when you're looking for clients, for example. So, as a large practice, we have something called a CRM database, which is basically client relationships, and in that it has all their information, what the touch points are, how often you contact them, things like that. So I think for me the worst thing you can do when leaving your application too late. So for those that are online that are currently doing their BA or their masters, now is the time to start thinking about applying for practices and doing something properly, something with rigor, making a plan, listing out the practices you want to apply for. Who are the ones that most align with your interests, that you're passionate with, contacting them first, and then having your sort of fallback position of, the ones that still you would be happy to work with, and then contacting them next. I think having a structured approach to the job hunt is really important, because it can be incredibly frustrating, because you're issuing things out into the ether and not hearing anything back. I think one thing for lots of students is the lack of feedback that they get from practices. So I think being proactive in that is another sort of key thing. But I think just really doing the job hunt seriously and treating it with sort of sensible approach with rigor is kind of your base level. You don't want to sort of half-ass this thing. It's really key. And yeah, I think just treating it seriously is super important. You can set up things like Notion databases or Notion boards that allow you to sort of track these things and categorize it and things like that. But yeah, I think number one would be create a system to find your job. Number two, LinkedIn. LinkedIn is cool. So when I graduated a long time ago, LinkedIn was really, really awful, and it was just full of sort of double glazing salesmen, and yeah, just not a fun place to be. So I never really sort of engaged with it. But it's something that I really have engaged with in the last couple of years. And I, every mentee that I speak to, I sort of push the idea of LinkedIn, and the idea of networking. It's such a sort of big opportunity for people to reach out, make connections, and sort of present yourself, and the things you're passionate about and interested in, specifically to employers. I obviously, I really like Instagram because that's what my videos do quite well on. But the reality is, if I'm connecting with people that are looking for employees, LinkedIn is the place I want to be. It's where people go to do their sort of business and things like that. And it's just a very good opportunity to kind of break down those barriers. As a large practice, the way it works is that CVs come into a group email, they get put into folders, and then they get issued out to teams when they need people. It's an impersonal thing, and you're being reviewed on your CV. If you can bypass that sort of gatekeeping thing by trying to make connections with people, even if it's just individuals within practices that you're interested in, contacted them, warming them up, sort of thing. Don't go in cold, but it breaks down that sort of barrier and gives you an opportunity to make the connections with potentially people that are going to make decisions. I mean, the other thing it does is helps you build your sort of personal brand, and that's a growing key concern for everyone within business, sort of thing. I mean, you don't have to be the next sort of influencer sort of thing. You can just talk about your work, your experience, the things you're interested in, and things will resonate with other people. You can start connect conversations. You can comment on other people's work. Ultimately, architecture is about people. It's about connection and things like that. So something like this, it's a massive tool that allows you to connect with, your potential future employer. The next thing I would say is editing format. So the CVs that have always impressed me and the portfolios that have always impressed me have always been the ones that are clear, concise, and they know how to format something. I mean, formatting and editing is an incredible skill that we use all the time in practice, producing documents, producing compelling stories through our documentation, designing access statements, how we promote the practice, sort of thing. So being able to edit your work down to show key information and to display it in a sort of clear and coherent way is a massive skill. So, we can kind of judge a lot from the way your portfolio is put together. just by the formatting and the way you kind of think about things and how things are aligned, how things, the use of white space around it. And, I would be looking at, architectural press, architectural zines, things like this for inspiration, because it doesn't have to be the sort of stale, boring white page. There are lots of kind of interesting architectural zines that do things in a colorful and imaginative way, but they have a clear, way of formatting and editing the imagery around it. We're not throwing everything at the wall. It's about choosing the right drawings. It's about choosing the full bleed image to the drawing on the white page and not cluttering things. I think so much can be shown in the sort of editing and formatting of portfolios. And I think it is something that you have an instant reaction to. So, I look at a lot of CVs, we're a big practice, we get a lot of CVs in. And, the speed at which you are reviewing them, it is fast, and you are making decisions and interpretations based on, small amounts of information sort of thing. So I think it really is something that really will set you aside if you can get that right, because those are the CVs and portfolios that I remember are the ones that have that, they just sort of get it in that sort of that editing and formatting sense. Number 4, Revit, fucking Revit. So we use Revit. Lots of big practices use Revit. I don't love Revit. Revit's a bit of a pain, but lots of people use it. The problem, and I'm obviously speaking from someone who works in a very large practice, the way a lot of practices employ are reactionary. So you will get a job, you're bidding for this job, or you're trying to convince the client to go forward, and all of a sudden the client says yes. And then you go, oh shit, what are we going to do? We need to employ people. So the problem is, if you don't have Revit or a base level understanding of software for the practice, that is a stopping point. However much I hate the fact that people are being judged on their software skills, because that goes against everything that I kind of promote. I really promote the idea of the sort of soft skills, the communication, the management of people, the sketching ideas and things like that. But it is a very difficult thing to get past if you don't have the base level understanding of the software. Now, obviously, I'm using Revit as an example because as a big practice, that's what we use. I would say in the London market, if you are applying to a lot of the practices, Revit will be the thing that you're being asked to use. I know some practices still use 2D drawing. And, like I said, if you don't know it, if you don't have that sort of base level of understanding, try and find it. ArchAdemia exists. There are ways of getting that experience. And even if it is just a base level understanding, saying, yes, I can open it and I can, I understand how, what BIM is and how the models are made and things like that. It just ticks a box and it just sets aside an issue. I mean, we do provide training, we have in-house training and things like that. But if it's, we obviously also have to get things agreed with our management as well. So if someone has the skill, has the Revit as a standard, it's much easier to get them through than if they don't. So, just take a course, maybe just sign up to our ArchAdemia. I mean, I'm doing them a plug. It's just ticks the box and gets it out of the way. And like I say, I fucking hate it, but it is kind of a necessary evil. And then number 5. So this goes back to the stuff that I like and I'm interested in. So what is your value? What value do you bring to the practice? And like Adam was talking about previously, what is it that someone can talk about you when you're not in the room, sort of thing? What is your kind of defining thing? What are you, they're super clear at communicating. They're a great communicator. They can cut through all the bullshit and, talk about the scheme really clearly, or, they have experience with planning, or they have the experience, dealing with contractors. They did a week on site and they know how to deal with contractors, sort of thing. It's that sort of USP thing of where you sit and where you stand and what is that thing that makes you shine? I mean, for me, it was sketching. I really like sketching. that was kind of the thing. And, being able to sort of sketch and talk and communicate my ideas with clients and stuff like that. It's quite difficult to do when you kind of see yourself as an all-rounder. And as architects, we do also, we do normally kind of, we don't want to pigeonhole ourselves. And that is kind of another difficulty that you kind of get into. So, you don't necessarily want to do that, but you do want to stand for something. You do want to show yourself off in a certain way. So I think, think about what it is that's really strong in your portfolio. Think about what it is that you're really passionate about and what you can bring to the practice. Are you super knowledgeable about sustainability? I had a mentee that was really interested in reuse and, products where you could reuse them and stuff. And that was his kind of thing and what he kind of stood for and what he started writing about and being known for, sort of thing. So, it's that bloody online thing about niching down and stuff, like having something that you kind of can be known for and see a really strong value in is again really clear, and how you communicate it in your sort of CV and portfolio. So that's me. Thank you very much, and I'll hand over. Is it Irina next?
It is. Yeah, Irina's next, if you would.
Yes. Hi, everyone. And can you hear me well?
Yep. It's clear.
Cool. Then I'm gonna start sharing the screen. Okay. Can you see my presentation?
Yeah. Spot on.
Yeah. So I'm Irina, and I'm an architectural designer and content creator currently working in Amsterdam. And my own employment story consists of actually 2 long-term internships, and both happened for me abroad. And basically the second one, let me get the current position I have now several months before I graduated from my master's at Politecnico di Milano. So today I want to share some tips that helped me personally to land my first job in architecture. So, and the first one is actually don't underestimate the value of internships, and especially during studies, because they give you the hands-on experience immediately. And of course, they will help you to figure out what is your actual passion in architecture. Because we all know that architecture industry offers quite a wide range of possibilities, what to do, what to work on. And internships, this is your way to find out what you like the most. And when it comes to local peculiarities, because I studied in Italy and then I worked in Netherlands. So in Italy, for example, the mandatory internships during master's degree are quite short. So it takes like 2.5 months, and they're mostly unpaid, which could be really tough. And on the other hand, in the Netherlands, all the internships are paid with a certain allowance, and the length could start from 4 to 6 months. But there is another catch in it, that you're not allowed to be interned after you graduated. So this perspective leads us to another very important trick, which I want to share with you. It's that internships actually open the doors to the biggest practices. So if you want to see how the star offices, let's say, work from the inside, you should apply for an internship. And if you dream about, let's say, Big or David Chipperfield or MDRDV, just go for it. Because after you graduated, the situation changes completely. And these kind of practices, they give usually preference to more experienced architects. And then, of course, adding value is a very special thing, which already was mentioned by Adam and Chris, and I'm going to mention it again. So basically, it's all about enhancing things and bringing something new on the table, or empowering the things in the office, in the practice. And what you could do, it could be absolutely anything regarding your skills. So how could you stand out among many other candidates which apply daily to the offices? It could be maybe exceptional rendering skills, or maybe an interest in artificial intelligence, or you're really proficient with the BIM processes and you have technical knowledge. It could be parametric design or graphic design and editorial design. So find these specific skills or qualities that could help you to stand out and be special for this exact practice. And what I noticed, there could be two ways, two strategies which you could follow. So first one is you're analyzing yourself and considering the strengths which you already have currently, and then you master these skills till the level to show it up to your potential employer. And that would happen to me. So in my case, let's say I was special with the Photoshop skills for my current office at the moment. And another strategy could be that when you're already in-house, you could start analyzing maybe the blind spots which the practice has and what could be the qualities or the skills that you will bring as an added value there. The next point might seem slightly obvious, but I still want to push on it. So it's incredibly important to treat an internship as a professional employment. What I mean by that is basically approach it with the same level of responsibility, commitment, and essential skills which you would show as a junior architect at the office. And think of it as a real chance to show yourself as a potential employee and just try to immerse yourself to this role. Imagine that you're already a part of the team and try to exceed all the expectations they have from you. And most importantly, just take it seriously and consistently showing up on time and maybe avoiding asking extra time off for your personal projects or study projects in case you combine it together. It all sends a very strong message to the employer, because employers appreciate dedicated people that they can rely on. This one is absolutely special for me because actually negotiations about employment was one of the most challenging and one of the hardest things during my last internship, because this is something we are not learning at the universities. And this is the moment when you can demonstrate if you're confident enough and if you're mature enough to get this position. And the best advice that helped me personally was to get prepared to these talks and to ask people around. So just take this initiative, go to the more experienced friends or colleagues at the office. Most probably people will be willing to share their insights with you. And just this fact that you will know, let's say, the scenario of these potential talks will noticeably decrease your stress and also just boost your self-confidence. There is nothing wrong with you if you don't know how to treat or how to handle these negotiation talks, but it's just important to not hesitate to ask around and to ask for help. And the last one, I want to talk about being just proactive during your employment process, especially if you're considering to move abroad for a job, because landing a job offer is just a beginning of the story. So the real roller coaster starts when you're actually facing some bureaucratic problems or bureaucratic nuances in a foreign country, because believe me, it's going to be slightly different than in your own country. And then just be ready that sometimes bigger practices, they have more experience with hiring internationals, while smaller practices, more local offices, like for example mine, they will not have this experience and they will expect you to split these responsibilities and to be involved in the process too. So just be ready to take it on. And another thing I wanted to share with non-European students is that, especially with the ones who aim to go to Europe or to the UK to get employed. So basically there is a very typical 3-step path, which starts with taking bachelor's or master's degree course in Europe or UK. And then during these studies, you will have an opportunity to go for an internship. And only after that to secure an employment. And skipping one of those steps and coming directly from non-European countries to Europe or to the UK might be highly challenging, especially in the context of architecture employment. And in some cases, like for example, in the Netherlands, it's actually impossible just bureaucratic wise. So keep in mind those 3 steps and get prepared for them to make the whole transition smoother for yourself. I think that was my tips. Thank you so much. And follow my blog on Instagram.
Nice little plug at the end there. Irina, if you don't mind, can you just 1 sec, just because this might
Sure.
save a question. One thing I was
Yes.
very impressed with was your move from it was from Italy to the Netherlands, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
could you just let everyone know why you made that move? Because well, for me personally, if I can just introduce it a little bit, I'm very impressed with the architecture in Holland. Some of the practices that are there, and obviously when we chatted separately, we were both agreeing that you'd love to work in the Scandinavian countries as well because the
Yeah.
architecture seems much more advanced than it is in the UK, for example. And the reason I wanted you to speak was because of your international view. So that final slide was fantastic, but what was it? Was it for a lack of opportunity in Milan, or was it or was it to broaden your horizons? What was the?
Well, I should say it was, of course, a complexity. There were many aspects to consider, but first of all, of course, the it was hard to get any position or even an internship in Italian context because you need to know Italian language, and the country is quite closed for international employment, let's say, unless you speak proficient Italian enough for work, and which was not my case. And then another reason was that I really keen on Dutch architecture and also, as you said, Scandinavian architecture. So I just felt more, yeah, aligned with this style, and I wanted to try. And then, of course, the third reason was that, as I said, in Italy, it's almost impossible to find something paid. And since I was already studying abroad, so far away from my home, and I couldn't afford to go somewhere to move to another city, let's say, without any allowance. So I thought, okay, I will consider maybe a little more northern countries for that as well.
Yeah, yeah. So
Yeah,
that's it. That's what I want people to take away from your segment, if you like, is the
yeah,
if you're struggling. So again, from a UK perspective, if you're struggling, I would strongly encourage you to look internationally because you will massively broaden your design toolkit. So thank
yeah,
you very much.
absolutely. Thank you.
Who did we say was next? I've got it down here.
I think it's
Samuel.
me, no?
Yeah.
Yeah, awesome. Okay. Hello everyone. My name is Samuel Kalejaye. I'm an architect based in Manchester, UK. I've been an architect for almost 4 years now, working on exciting residential and office developments in Manchester. I am also a content creator. I create content around architecture, motivation, and fitness. To kick off my segment, I thought I would share my experience on how I landed my first architectural job. This was back in January 2015, after just 3 semesters at uni. Reason for that was just the way my structure was, my course was structured. We needed to find a placement after that semester. I had waited until I'd finished all my assignments, exams before applying. I didn't do anything particularly different or unique, I must say. I wrote cover letters, prepared my CV, portfolio, and sent them off to various companies speculatively. What I did do, though, which you might find helpful, is I started with a list of companies that previous students from my university had worked for, and I started applying to those companies first. The logic behind this was that I felt that if employers were happy with the performance of a student from the same university, they'll be open to take on another student, basically. The other thing I did was specify how long I intended to work there. For me, that was 6 months. The reason why I think this is, I believe this can be a benefit because some companies may only be able to commit sort of shorter term rather than long term. So I kind of felt like that worked for me. It did take a while for me to find a job, so don't be discouraged if yours doesn't come immediately. So before I sort of go into my top tips, I just wanted to sort of clarify sort of what your CV is, your portfolio is, and what they're supposed to do. So in essence, your CV is a summary of your education, experience, and skill, and your portfolio is supposed to sort of evidence what you stated in your CV. And so in your CV, I would expect to see the following headings. I would expect to see sort of a summary or statement about yourself, education, experience, skills, awards and achievements, activities and interests, and referees. And then your portfolio, on the other hand, is to evidence your ability. For example, if you say you are really good at using Revit in your CV, then in your portfolio, I would expect to see a project or a design that you've modeled using Revit. So sort of keep this in mind when you're preparing both documents. And then also when you're applying for jobs, you're likely going to produce two portfolios. One is your mini portfolio, which is a condensed version of your full portfolio, which you will use to apply for jobs. Reason being is that employers have a limit on the size of documents that they can receive. So your mini portfolio is a smaller sized portfolio of your full one, and then your full portfolio is a more in-depth body of work that you present at interview. And the way you structure both portfolios are different. So I would say that your mini portfolio is about showing as much of your skills as possible, whereas your full portfolio, you might want to focus a little bit more on sort of storytelling and a narrative. That's just one example. So my first piece of advice is quality over quantity, especially with your mini portfolio. This is the first thing that an employer is going to look at. They'll likely just flick through it very, very quickly. In fact, I saw a director of mine sort of do this whilst we were having our Monday morning weekly meeting. And so your mini portfolio really needs to grab the attention of whoever's looking at it. As we scroll, you kind of want us to stop and take in your drawings, your images, etc. You want to show a variety of skills that you can do really well. You don't need to show your ability to produce 5 plans. Just show me that you can produce 1 plan really, really well. That's all that I need. I would expect to see your ability to draw plans, sections, elevations, base study, elevations and details, diagrams, including site analysis, renders, and some collages. So with this in mind, be very selective with what you show and how you show it. Also with your portfolio, start with your best work. Number 2 is details matter. I'm not talking about construction details. I'm talking about graphic details. As architects, we are detail orientated. So our eyes are drawn to things that are out of place and not quite right. So you don't want us to sort of notice any errors in your CV and your portfolio. So having said that, make sure there are no typos. Make sure you've proofread your cover letters and portfolio, and have someone else also proofread it as well. When laying out your CV and portfolio, I would say you want to sort of keep the formatting very consistent. So looking at this example on the right here, you can see at the top is the what, at the bottom is the where, and on the right is the when. And sort of that formatting is consistent in the education section and in the awards section. So, formatting your CVs and your portfolios in this manner just gives us a very professional appearance. And then finally, in your drawings and in your images, make sure you use drawing conventions such as line weights, north points, key plans, section cut markers, labels, scale bars. All of this is very, very important because when you're in practice and you're having to produce these drawings, you're going to need to use these things. So we want to see that in your portfolio. The next one I've entitled Outside Architecture. I know it's easy to believe that employers only care about your work, but at the end of the day, you are a person and you will be contributing to the environment of the business. Therefore, your personality and your interest do matter. As a result, I would suggest that you sort of have a one page in your portfolio that's dedicated to creative interests outside of architecture or any special skills that you have. For me, this was always, hand drawing photorealistic pencil portraits. I always included this at the end of every single one of my portfolios, and my interviewers were always impressed when they saw it. What it did was it sparked a conversation that wasn't architecturally related, and it allowed them to sort of get to know me a little bit more. The other benefit of this, it gives the opportunity to bond with your interviewer, or whoever's looking at it, especially if they share similar interest. So I sort of implore you to think about what that could be and what you can include in yours. Yours could be sketching, photography, 3D modeling, physical modeling, or even knitting or something, something that would sort of, that's creative but not directly related to architecture. And my final point is, you've probably heard this a million times already, so I won't stress too much about it. Is about networking, because it can help you get a foot in the door in some places. I think upon reflection, I believe 1 out of the 5 jobs I've had is kind of like being through a contact. I'm not saying that has landed me the job, but it allowed me to begin dialogue with prospective employer. So I would say that you sort of build relationships, seek opportunities from your tutors, lecturers, and critics, because they are often in touch with employers looking for students if they're not, themselves. So keep that in mind. Also keep in touch with your colleagues and get to know all the students as well, because if they are already in a job, what you find is companies have sort of employee incentives when it comes to recruitment. So for example, if you know someone working for X company and that company is looking to hire, if they put your name forward and you're successful, that person that will get a bonus. So ask around, ask people if their companies are hiring. You just never know. And my final tip is to share your work online, because the benefit goes beyond just finding a job. That concludes my portion of the presentation. I hope you found that helpful. I will now pass you over to Sana.
Thanks for that. That wasn't a drawing. Go back. That was a photo.
Yeah, it's pencil drawing.
You photoshopped. That is fantastic. That. Wow.
Yeah. Thanks.
Cool. Can everyone see that okay?
Yeah.
Brilliant. Hi everyone, my name's Sana. So yeah, about me, I'm gonna keep it really short and sweet. I was in a similar position to many of you guys here today. I noticed there was a lot of students on today. So I completed my part 2 last year, and now I'm working freelance as a part 2, and also doing a bunch of different stuff. So I like to call myself a multidisciplinary creator and designer. So I really know like the pain of not being able to find a job in the industry. When I did my part 1, it took me basically almost a year to find a job. So I think the main thing that I noticed from the jump from part 1 to part 2 was building a personal brand. And that's what I've been doing for the past sort of 4 years. So something that I have learned, and it has been mentioned before, is I feel like it's good to know as well, because I didn't know when I did my part 1, is that the architecture industry is quite close-knit, and it is kind of about who you know before it's about what you know. So it's really, really crucial that you make as many connections as possible and network. And you can completely do this by building a personal brand. So I'm not just saying this so that you can find jobs, but your personal brand will kind of help you long term in your career as well, because you get to learn from other people in other industries. Architecture is an industry that's all about collaboration. You also get to position yourself really well so that it works for you in the long term. And a platform that I absolutely love, and Chris has also mentioned, is LinkedIn. And it's a really great tool, but it's often very misunderstood by younger people, especially because they kind of think that LinkedIn's all about kind of posting your achievements, but it's really not. And you can create a lot of great content on there and find some amazing people on there too. So I have a couple of points that I think are actions that you can take. These things have worked for me in the past. The first one is cold calling. So this is actually how I got my part one job, where I called up a smaller local practice near me, asked if I could send in my CV speculatively. And as soon as I got off the phone, I instantly emailed them. I knew who I was sending my portfolio to. And this, yeah, just made a really good impression, I suppose. So like Adam mentioned, like having an email template is great, but you do need to tailor it to the practice and highlight the skills that you think would be valuable to them. So that's, yeah, kind of like a first initial point. My second point is back to LinkedIn. You'd be surprised how many people don't complete their LinkedIn profiles. And it's just such a shame because I feel like we have so many different achievements and things like that. And you want to kind of basically show them off as much as you can. So the best thing to do is to complete your LinkedIn profile to the best of your ability. And that means, you know, profile picture, having a nice banner, adding some links, completing out your experience section, and even getting recommendations from your tutors or past employers. And this just gives a really good impression because when a potential employer Googles you, for example, they'll be able to have a nice kind of reference point to go off. My third point is to find your unfair advantage. And this is something that I talk about alongside personal branding. And essentially, your unfair advantage is like the intersection of skills and hobbies that make you unique. So I've included two examples here. Matteo is really, really talented at architectural illustration. And that's kind of like what his personal brand is all about, and that's what he posts about too. Every time I see that kind of orange background show up my feed, I know exactly who the post is from. So again, it plays on that whole idea of being memorable. And then in a similar way, a good friend of mine, Ibuka, he's a designer in Canada, and he absolutely loves Revit, loves BIM, and he's made that into kind of his personal brand, and he posts content around it as well as tutorials. And I'm not saying that you have to be a content creator as such, but having that kind of like one thing that you're really passionate about that you can talk about and share will make you a lot more attractive. My fourth point is to get creative. So I've seen quite a number of CVs and portfolios where I know the student is trying to be really professional and keep it minimal and clear and concise. But I really do think that once you do add some like spice and flair and get really creative with the way you present things, it does help you stand out a lot. You can also, yeah, like Samuel said, connect with part ones and twos who are at the practices that you want to work for. Have a chat with them. I feel like everyone on LinkedIn is very, very friendly. Everyone's up for answering a few questions or even hopping on a call. So don't be afraid to connect with people you don't actually know. Yeah, post each page of your design portfolio on LinkedIn. So this is something that I'm currently recommending to students. Instead of attaching the entire like 50 or 100 page portfolio, break it down into each page and post those consistently. And what you'll then get is an archive of all of your work on your LinkedIn profile too, which is just, yeah, a really nice way to kind of like have things for people to look at. Then my final thing is circling around to, I guess, what my interest is, which is productivity and organization, is to stay on top of your progress. So I know once you do start applying and looking for jobs, it can get really tricky to figure out which ones you have applied to, and especially if you're tailoring them to. So I would recommend setting up a Notion tracker or an Excel spreadsheet, whichever works for you, and just kind of keeping track of who you've sent that email to, which practice, what date it was, maybe sending a follow-up email. And then this just allows you to kind of like get really organized with it. And then you can also over time see your progress. So yeah, those are my like quick and easy 5 tips. If you are based in London, I'm running a program called Open Studio, which is workshops for exactly this kind of thing. It's also a chance for you to gain access to architecture practices and learn more about like day-to-day stuff. So if you are interested in that, you can sign up to the newsletter with this QR code. Thanks so much.
Brilliant. Before we move on to Thomas, for me, if I can just sort of reiterate a point about you're big on personal brand, and that filters through to you. Even today, just for everyone's benefit, I gave everyone a very vague brief just to come with some slides, and you can see that Sana's took the time to, not that no one else has, by the way. I'm just sort of saying that's the point that Sana's mentioned about the grid and those little metallic bubbles. Love all that, and as an employer, it shows a level of thinking. Simple as that. It shows that thinking. Does that filter into your everyday life, your designs, how you deal with people? It's absolutely brilliant. Right, the big man.
Okay, hello. Let me share my screen. One moment. You all see that okay?
Perfect.
So, yes, my name is Thomas Rowntree. Similarly to everyone else, I'm an architectural designer and content creator. And I do all my content creation through my brand, which is Tom Rose Studios, which is very much my personal brand. It's very much documentation of my journey, my skills, my interests, and I kind of resonate with everything that everyone said about personal branding, and representing yourself, expressing your interests, documenting your journey. And it's going to be difficult now that I'm the last one presenting to kind of better anyone else's advice, but I definitely echo everyone's advice so far. So the first thing I think is absolutely crucial with applications and the interview process, or just generally looking for a job, is to make sure to express you and your personality, whether that's through your personal brand and you express that through your content or through your work, or whether it's when it comes down to the interview process, making sure that you and your personality comes across. Be yourself, talk about you and your interests and your hobbies, express this in your application. I think the kind of application process and looking for a job is very stressful, it's very nerve-wracking, and it's very easy to kind of lose track of just being yourself, just being calm, collected, be yourself. I think that's really, really important. So these are 3 pictures of me. This is me traveling. I love traveling. I love visiting cities. I'm a big Arsenal fan, so that's a big part of my life. And then, of course, I love making content. So that's a huge part of what I do. And I try my best in every interview or every time I approach a company to express these things in my personality, and my application. The next thing is to build an application package. And I mean, this has already kind of been covered in other presentations, and I think this is absolutely fundamental. A lot of people look at the application process as a simple case of, okay, I need a CV, a cover letter, and a portfolio, and that's it. But I actually encourage you to have a kind of total package, with a website, with a social profile, whether that's your personal brand. We've got Chris Simmons here. I thought I'd just throw him in there because he's got a great platform. Whether that's business cards, whether that's videos, that what Adam was talking about earlier, kind of sending a personalized video to an application. I think it's important to create these things as a total package for your application and not just look at it as a CV, cover letter, and portfolio. And this in itself will help you stand out from the rest. It will help you help an employer look at you and think, okay, wow, he's quite, or they've kind of got themselves put together. They're very professional. They've really thought about this, and it's all about being remembered and making sure that you're standing out, which is absolutely crucial. And with that, I think something that I talk about a lot is branding your application or branding your portfolio. So I think something that's really not really talked about much in architecture is that really when we put together the communication of our projects, the graphic communication, the graphic style, essentially what we're doing is we're branding the portfolio. And what I mean by that, if you think of the kind of biggest global brands in the world, you think of Apple, they have a consistency, they have a clarity, they have an identity. So every time you see an Apple product or an Apple advertisement, you know it's Apple. You can resonate with the brand, you see it, and there's a collective messaging behind that. And I think that's exactly the same when it comes to an architecture portfolio. There needs to be a collective messaging, a consistent color scheme, a consistent typography, a consistent style. And I think it's all about consistency and branding and having that that kind of consistent communication throughout everything that you send off to job applications. So as you can see here, I've branded my kind of application, my cover letter, and my CV. And you can very much kind of see these three pieces of work, and you would know that they all relate together. You look at these three items, and you know that that is, okay, that's this person's work, and it's kind of very bold and graphic, and it would really kind of stand you out from the rest. The next thing is to talk about, don't talk about your skill set, instead show it. I think it's very easy to kind of in your CV just list out some skills, or just kind of go into an interview and say, yeah, I'm good at this, I'm good at time management, or I'm good at drawing. And then they'll be like, okay, well, so let's see that. Let's see the evidence to that. So I think in your application, it's crucial just to demonstrate your skill set through the application. So when you show up to the interview, they already know, they've seen your amazing drawings, they've already seen your models or your technical detailing. And I think it's really important to emphasize that you don't need to talk about it, you need to show it. Whether that's even video editing, like myself, through my kind of content creation, I absolutely love video editing. Whether that's hand drawing, like Anna, who does absolutely beautiful sketches, or whether it's painting or whatever skill set you have, make sure you demonstrate that through your application. And of course, show more than architecture skills as well, like what Samuel was saying. I think that's really important. And my final point is to remember that it's a two-way interview. It has to be the right fit for both of you. I think this is often forgotten. People are obviously very kind of conscious about selling themselves and about making sure that they express themselves to be the perfect fit for the company. But also the whole application process and the interview process is to find out whether that practice is best for you as well. Do you see yourself working there? Do you enjoy their work? What is your preferred size practice? These are the kind of questions you've got to ask yourself when you're applying for these practices, and really kind of question whether they look after their employees, or are they a sociable practice, or most importantly, do they have a summer party? What are these things that you think that you can really fit in, and this is the right place for you? I think it's really important to go into an interview or the application process and really think about these things. And that is me. So thank you and good luck to everyone. I think there's been some absolutely amazing advice, and I really hope that you kind of all take it on board.
And a lovely way to finish, actually. I've obviously followed you for a while, but I was mega impressed with. If you don't mind, could you actually reshare that? Sorry.
Yeah.
It was the one where you had the full suite of stuff. You know, and you said like
this one.
One more prior that.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're going to take anything away from today, it's that. It's the full suite. We've spoken about things, but actually, I think that is a fantastic demonstration of that collective, and that was similar to a point I was making earlier about. And by the way, Tom, you touched on it. You did say it is tough going last, but actually, I think you've brought it home beautifully with your demonstrations, and to see that full package of this is basically what I was getting at the start. We get a submission and it's just a PDF attachment, and that's it, 100 pages, you know, you're bored to death. Whereas if, you know, even that cover letter, that graphic is absolutely stunning. To just see the graphic on that cover letter would automatically go, oh, that's quite interesting. Let's read further. It does draw you in. So that alone is powerful. And then to pitch your entire submission in that sort of format is absolutely brilliant. And if you don't mind, to put you on the spot a little bit, I did have a question for you, which was, you have obtained employment recently, and I think that you know, I think everyone wants to know, you know, what do you think was the main thing that got you that employment, or is it just all of the above? That's fine if that's your answer.
Well, the actual employment that I took on, a key component of the reason why they employed me was because the guy interviewing me really enjoyed my storytelling techniques. So he loved narration, storytelling, whether that was through my drawings, whether that's through the way I communicated my project. And he felt like storytelling is such a crucial, and communication is such a crucial feature to architecture, and that he really kind of valued that skill set. So I think with your application package, what I am doing here really is creating a story, creating a narrative. Especially when you come here and you look at the details, you can see there's a total narrative between the application. And so I think storytelling is very, very powerful, whether that is through the way you speak about your work or the way that you kind of put together your presentation. I think it's very, very powerful.
Spot on. We have a need in our practice. We have a need for video editing. We've crafted it through ArchAdemia, but for RBA, if we go to a new project pitch, we don't take like a PowerPoint. We take a 60-second short film, which is our vision for that project, and we just sit back, let the film do the talking, and more often than not, you win the scheme because they're absolutely blown away. So to actually I thought it was interesting that you showed video editing as well. None of us have mentioned that actually as a unique skill. So yeah, fantastic. People have been. So if you could unshare that, Tom, if you would, thank you.
Yeah.
Now, let me see if I can move into the Q&A. There's a button at the bottom. If it goes off, don't blame me. But there is a. Right. Okay. So can everyone else? So all I've done is hit it, and it's just opened the tab. Can everyone else see the Q&A? It looks like they can because I can see a few popping in. And it's given me the option to type the answer, but I'd obviously we'll speak it. Can all the other panelists see that the actual question and answer? Yeah. Okay.
Yep.
So if I may, I'll go first, and I actually quite fancy the one from George. The difference between part 1 and 2. So I'll take that one, and if someone else can maybe jump in with the others, you know, we'll just jump about. Doesn't have to be too organised. So George has asked, I was wondering what the key differences are between the skills and experience expected from part 1 and part 2, and I emphasise the word expected deliberately there because, and again, I can only speak from my experience, but it is actually quite different. Simply put, the expectation for part 1 is more a contribution to early stage stuff. Again, this is our practice. So it's we don't trust the part 1 doing anything beyond stage 3. To be frank, so we keep part 1s at the front end, but it's not just boring tasks though. It could be SketchUp modeling. It could be visuals, contributing to reports, and most importantly, contributing to design. We actually do have crits. We've got like a little area over there. I don't want to mess with my camera just in case, but we've got a crit area at the front of the office, and we love having a fresh, youthful pair of eyes on projects because you do get into certain habits. For part 2, the expectation in our practice is somewhat of a, and forgive the phrasing, but somewhat of a grooming towards part 3. So we do have a higher expectation in that we're trying to, you know, get them in the rhythm of becoming a project runner eventually. So for part 2, we do then expect to see a bit more maturity when it comes to the latter stages of projects, but also maturity of dealing with people, and again, you know, Tom mentioned about the storytelling aspect. Well, that's important when you're explaining things to clients. Sometimes it is hard to express your design, your ideas, your rationale. So we do start to expect a little bit of client facing and a little bit more of technical understanding. So I hope that helps. There's tons coming in if anyone wants to jump in.
I'm gonna take the how do you start a conversation with someone on LinkedIn that is working in my interested company and not know them personally? Which was harsh. That's sorry. So don't go all in cold. I think, you know, warm them up a bit. I think the whole thing with LinkedIn is about making a personal connection. So I would suggest if they're posting, you are commenting on their post now and again. You're sharing similar interests or showing an interest in their work. You know, you've got a similar interest into something they're doing. Once you've exchanged comments a few times, then take it into the private chat sort of thing and, you know, carry on talking. the absolute worst thing you can do is just send a cold message out to someone, spell their name wrong and ask for a job. It just, the whole thing doesn't work, and it's all just going to, backfire, sort of thing. So, just treat it like you would a real life connection. They need nurturing and warming up, and forming a relationship before you ask something of them. I think that's the kind of important thing.
That goes for networking as well. When you're networking as an architecture practice, you don't just go up to someone and say, "Oh, I'm really good at design and building." So you just get to know the person individually. That's it, and then eventually the opportunity arises. So spot on. And what I'm going to do, just so everyone's aware, I'm just going to, once it's been answered, I'll dismiss it just so the list is shortened a little.
I can grab Connor's question about graphic style.
I've teed it up for the plug there.
Yeah, so Connor, I think coming up with a graphic style, I think all depends on what your interests are, how you enjoy architecture, how you enjoy communicating architecture, but also making sure that your graphic style is very project specific. If you've got a project that is for example, that's very playful, and that it's maybe like a theme park, or it's a playground or something, you want to use very expressive, bright colors and go for that approach, and try and tell the story through your graphic style, and representing the kind of narration behind the project and what the project identity is. If your project was like something like mine, for example, which was a warehouse, it was very industrial, it was on a port, so you can imagine warehouses and mechanical features with lots of kind of cranes and smoke and steam and everything. So I went for a very dark industrial feel with the harsh blacks, grays, whites, and I also really enjoy that style myself anyway. So I think it's definitely a mix between what the story is you're trying to tell of your project and what is the best way of communicating that, but also embedding your interests and what you find interesting into it. Because at the end of the day, you want to make the whole communication process as fun as possible. I really enjoy describing my work and showing off my drawings, because I am really passionate about the drawings that I create. I really enjoy them and I like that style. So I think it's really important to kind of drive that home. Obviously, it's very difficult to come up with a complete new and unique style. It's very useful to look at precedents, look at work that has come before, and you might see a drawing and you think, wow, I really like that. That would be really nice to do, and that works really well with the project. So then you make your own interpretation of that. Definitely do not copy the way people do stuff, but definitely try and take people's work as inspiration, to give you a base of kind of the way you want to represent your work. But yeah, graphic style is all about the communication of the project and making sure you're driving home the narrative. And always think narrative. When you're putting together your drawings, think, okay, what is this drawing portraying? What is the story that I'm telling?
Tom, you're too polite there. I'll do it for you then. Tom's got a course on it. So go to his website and watch that course. Obviously we sell courses, so we are kind of advocates of that. But listen, the difference between a course, generally, say I'm pushing Tom's stuff. The difference between a course and YouTube is the creator is more incentivized by breaking it down step by step, and it's just way easier to follow, way more detailed. So I definitely encourage you to have a look at that.
For sure.
Anyone else want to be brave and try and answer another one, or I don't mind. Oh yeah,
I see.
I was going to say there's a non-EU one there. Yeah, there you go.
Well, I see a question for me. How is applying for internships in another country, applying to work in the Netherlands, but being in Italy? Yeah. So yeah, basically, in my case, most of the interviews I went through were online, actually, because I was based in another country at the moment. But you should be also prepared that some offices might ask you to come for an interview, for a real personal interview. And for example, I know the case, my friends applied to Pita Zumthor and they asked her to come. So that was another story. But also, my employment story was a little mess, because I applied. I didn't know that in the Netherlands they have, let's say, sort of a division there are offices that are registered by government that they can employ the internationals, and there are the others who cannot because they didn't apply for that. So it's just the nuances. So I didn't know about that, and I applied basically wherever I wanted. And then during the process, I figured out that this specific office have some troubles of employing me. And then, yeah. So I will have two tips for you, let's say, about Midlands, that there is this kind of registered sponsorship thing. So just check if this specific office can employ the international, and then go for that. So to not waste your time. And usually it's bigger offices, of course. Smaller local offices, they don't do that usually. And another tip is, I hope it doesn't sound incorrect, but always check the web pages of the offices and the team section, and just have a look there and see if there is a diversity of names, let's say, and if you can recognize that there are internationals at the office. This will mean that the office is open to employ somebody from different countries than they are based in. So this would be my suggestion also.
I'll take the anonymous attendee one. Person said, can you apply to architectural firms that are not hiring Part 1 assistants, such as just sending an email with your portfolio attached? If you were to apply to such firm, you'd be making a speculative application, meaning that the company itself is not looking to fill that position. But that doesn't mean you can't send over your portfolio. What will likely happen is, if they do like your work and they do like what they see, they will shortlist it. So when they do come around, needing to take on a Part 1, they'll probably go into their list of, candidates and sort of contact you that way. So the answer to that is yes. But typically, if, the business doesn't have the need to take you on, it's sort of unlikely that they'll take you on just for the sake of it.
We have that shortlist though. That's spot on. We have a folder on the server for a short list of applicants that have impressed us, and we do revisit that. So spot on. Irina, it says that you would like to answer that question as well. Was that just an accident, or?
I'm not sure which one.
The one where it says, can you apply to a firm that isn't hiring?
No, I think it's an accident. I was just scrolling around.
Okay, no problems. See if you can uncheck that so I can dismiss it, but don't worry if not.
Yep.
I'll jump in with the what are things not to say at an interview. So I can dismiss. Oh no, sorry. So things not to say at an interview. Personally, other than the obvious, don't try not to swear and say anything stupid, and don't give too heavy of an opinion on things. I actually think you should have the freedom that Thomas mentioned. You should have the freedom of getting your personality across. And if that doesn't land, then they're not the right company for you. We do have a certain judgment of a person's character. And what I mean by that is more to do with the things I touched on about confidence and client liaison and things like that. And we do have a certain culture in our studio. And we do sort of think, would they fit in, or would they add to the culture? I don't want to kind of forget that we love people from different backgrounds who add variety to the practice, whether that's different backgrounds, different cultures, who can maybe bring a different perspective on design and all that sort of stuff. So I would personally say, other than stupid obvious things, I would say I'd encourage you to say as much as you can and really express yourself. And again, as Tom said, be sure to ask questions. Be careful on asking too many questions in terms of, like, say, benefits. I got a little put off by someone who was asking, we're a small practice, and they were asking what our Bupa plan was. I was like, well, we do well to afford that. So again, pitch some of your questions according to the size of practice. But I would encourage you to really pick the bones of that practice, as Tom said, because you do need to make sure it works for you. And one thing that we're all trying to tackle, by the way, as a collective, is some of the stigmas in the industry to do with long hours and late night and the stress, all that sort of stuff. And we're a practice the other than right now, I'm still in the office, but we very rarely work past 5:30 p.m. We never work weekends. Every one of our team members gets a performance bonuses based on company performance and project performance, all that sort of stuff. So I am confident that we're not unique in that, and I think if we're all kind of pushing that narrative, I think the whole industry will be elevated, and that includes you quizzing interviewers as well.
I think to add to that quickly as well, I think some of the very simple but important things to consider as well is the location of the practice. How far is it for you to commute? What was your feeling when you went into the office? How did you feel in the practice? Did you feel like you fit in that space? Did you like the lighting? Did you like? I know obviously this is very specific and you can't be too picky, but also you just have to feel comfortable in that space, and also just feel like, okay, yeah, I see myself working here for the next few years or however long. Because if you go into an office and you get a bad feeling or a bad vibe, or you don't get the right feeling, then you don't want to risk kind of committing yourself to a long-term contract. So I think those small things and those details are really important. I'm very close to my office, which means I can come back on lunch. It means I can get back in time to do things like this, which is really important to my kind of lifestyle and well-being. So just thinking about those lifestyle decisions is crucial.
Spot on.
Yeah, and I think the last thing I'll add to that is don't forget that you are also in a professional environment. So, it's good to have personality, show yourself off, but, still keep it professional and show that you can carry yourself in a professional manner as much as possible.
Yeah, lovely way to round that off. In case people go too mad with the personality stuff. We had two lots of asking that question, so I'll just dismiss the both of them. I've seen one there, a quickish one from Graham there, where he's asking about what advice would you give to get on the ladder. That is, if you're struggling, that is the internship model, really. And I use internship because, it varies worldwide, doesn't it, what that means? But for us, we never go beyond 2 weeks. Just for example, we feel like we're maybe taking advantage of people if we go longer than that. So for our practice, just for example, we make sure that we cover travel costs and food costs at the very, very least. Sometimes a little bit more depending on our revenue that month. And we I say it's just 2 weeks and it's just about experience. So if you're desperate to get on the ladder, I would encourage you to put yourself forward for some sort of internship. If not the normal routes we've mentioned, by the way.
Yeah. And Margaret asks, is it wise to do a master's in real estate finance as a recent architecture graduate? It's kind of hard to answer that without sort of a follow-up question. I think that really depends on what you want to do going forward and what you want to eventually, get into. Do you want to eventually become an architect, or do you want to, move more into real estate and perhaps work for a developer? If you do want to become an architect, I would say that going down the master's route in real estate finance will sort of detour you a little bit, because to become qualified, you do need the RIBA Part 2 and the Part 3. So you will kind of be going on a detour. So I think you just need to ask yourself, what you want to do with your career and where you want to get to.
Spot on. Best way to research architect firms. That's a tough one. That is a really tough one. That is, I gave, just as a reminder, my email is adam@archademia.com. Maybe drop me an email afterwards, and all the other guys obviously as well, get in touch with people. I think that's more of a, as part of your research, approach people who are already in the industry. So like locally, I know practices that are great to work for, bad to work for. I've worked at practices where you were shouted at for wearing headphones, talking, things like that. It's ridiculous. There are some of those old school firms that still exist. So I would just say that is more of it as part of your research. You've got to reach out, and that speaks to the networking thing that a few speakers have already mentioned. You can't really Google, is a firm good or bad, because every practice is putting the best foot forward online. So you do need to speak to people in the industry.
I think the only thing I'd add to that is that obviously part of the process is understanding the type of work practices do, which you can see from magazines to zine, online sort of thing. And again, that is about aligning your interests within architecture, within a practice that, does the sort of work that you're interested in has the sort of, morals or areas of interests that align with your kind of thought process. So, there is a sort of pastoral side. Is it a good place to work with? But also there's kind of a design intention kind of side, and stylistically, is it somewhere where, you have similar interests and things like that?
And just to add to that quickly, I think when I was applying for jobs, something that I would always do, obviously you'd find a job on Dazine or LinkedIn or something. The next thing that I would do is then look for their website and see what the website was like. And sometimes if a website was really well constructed, really graphic, very bright and playful, I was drawn to that because it gave off the intention that this is a very creative practice, or it kind of set the tone. Or if you saw a website that was very bland and nothing was really going on, all the pictures were just of architecture and nothing of people, that would give me a bit of a red flag. And I think, these people, is this practice more interested in their work than their employees? These are obviously very minor things to be aware of, but these do kind of set the tone, and it will give you a feeling when you are looking for practices, whether you feel like it's the right fit for you or not.
Yep. Another question. From Hamid, how do you stay updated with all the architectural trends and new technology? I would say LinkedIn. I think there are a lot of people having conversations on the topic. So I think if you can find the people who are, they talk about that thing, they'll be reposting articles and, making posts of themselves making posts from themselves, talking about those things. So just get on LinkedIn and do your search.
Yeah, and everyone here as well. It's kind of our job, isn't it, to stay up to date as well. So yeah. And my favourite website, I'm sure everyone's heard of it, but my favourite website is Dazine as well. That's a good place to start if you want to follow a publication. David's asked what are the best ways to earn revenue while working as an architect. And the talk I went to recently with the RIBA was, I forget her name now, but she was incredible. She was this year's RIBA gold medalist. She was unbelievable. And some of the stuff that she was encouraging people to do was, it was all encompassing, lifting the profession, everything that we're about. But a guy in the audience said, well, that's good and well, but how can I keep my practice afloat while I'm trying to explore some of these big ideas? So it kind of speaks to that. And one way is kind of what we're all sort of doing is content creation. That pays a little bit. There are other ways that you can earn money as a professional in our industry as well. So we offer different services. We offer graphics, web design, CGI, and all that sort of stuff. So we've got different offshoots that result in all different types of commissions as well, and those other ones are a lot less laborious, a lot less stressful. So I would encourage you to, as you're working up your skills, or as you're working through your career, I would encourage you to maybe even set up a few sort of side hustles in those specialisms that an architect can easily transfer to. Anyone else? For anyone else?
There was a question in the there was a question in the chat from Sadia. It was talking about applying for jobs, but many of us are in the final stages of our projects. and worry about applying for jobs but falling behind with our final year studio projects. So I think, yeah, talking about that balance between applying to jobs but also being a student, which I totally understand. I would just say like see it as something that's sort of chipping away in the background. So if you even take like half a day on the weekend to complete your LinkedIn profile, then yeah, that kind of like sets a good foundation, I suppose. And then if you're spending maybe a couple of hours curating some posts and scheduling them for the week, like stuff like that, it's more sort of like atomic habit type practices that can help you to stay consistent and apply for jobs and be organized. So yeah, I hope that helps.
Plan for it. I think Chris touched on that, didn't he, actually, in one of his as well, about creating a structure in which you plan all this. So it's tough, isn't it? It is. I remember it sort of fondly with you're stressing about your final project. You're worrying about how you're getting around to rendering the thing in Photoshop. Never mind writing a nice letter to 100 firms. So I do hear you on that, and it is just you've got to just bank the time, really.
Question from Farouk for me. So my question is, Tom, as a content creator, I'm assuming it says, what is the best way to embed my interest in making videos into my architecture? Is being able to make videos valuable.
Nice.
I think being able to make videos is super valuable because it's another avenue to be able to communicate, like I said earlier, about narration and storytelling. I think in architecture, it's super important to express different mediums, not just exploring drawings, but obviously through model making, through digital models, through renders, through video. I think all of these different types of medias come together to help you tell a story of your project. And in terms of embedding your interest into architecture and your video making, I think honestly, this just comes down to testing and just start filming stuff and start talking about things and just see what you're interested in and see if it sticks. For me, when I started making content, I had absolutely no idea that I was going to do architecture content. I started doing YouTube based on fitness and my interest in my kind of healthy lifestyle and stuff. And then it turned into architecture content because architecture kind of consumed my life. And it was just a case of me testing that out and filming things. And over the years, I've learned ways that I think work better and what don't work better. And I've understood over a long period of time of how to embed my interest into filming and really expressing myself. So it takes time. I think it's just testing. I think there's a larger conversation of when it comes to personal branding or content creation. The most important thing is just to start. Just pick up your camera, sign up to a LinkedIn or Instagram, post something, and that will just start getting the ball rolling. Whether you're looking to gain a following or you just want to use it as a documentation, just get started. And I know that is not the best advice because you probably want to know a very specific way of doing it, but I think just get started, put things out there, see what sticks, and then you'll realize in the kind of future exactly how you want to express yourself.
Well, Mr. Beast says, come back to me when you've made 100 videos. and it's only once you've made your 100th that you realise what's good and what's not, isn't it?
Yeah.
Adele says, what would the page limits be for the brief and longer format versions of your portfolio? So with the mini portfolio that you're going to be using to make applications, you want to just double check on the website of the company that you're applying to, because they will have maybe certain requirements. They might say 5 pages, they might say 10 pages, they might say it needs to be 5 MB max. So just make sure that you comply with whatever requirement that they have. That's the most important thing. And then for the full portfolio, that's really up to you. So in the past, I've created one that is as long as you want it to be, but just be mindful of that because in your interview, you're going to be going through that portfolio. You're going to talk them through, go through page by page. So you don't want to make it too long that you can't actually finish the entire thing. So just be mindful of that presentation essentially that you're going to give at interview. But in the past, I've taken my project reports with me, the individual project reports with me to interview. But I've also compiled like a bespoke one that kind of like has a compressed version of all my projects into one portfolio.
What if, and sorry to put you on the spot, but what if the requirements aren't readily available for the mini one? What would you suggest?
I would say 10 pages.
So, yeah, 10 pages, 5 meg.
10 pages. Yeah.
Yeah. Spot on.
I just wanted to touch on Misha's question, which talks about current part one experience at a smallish firm, getting a good experience with stages 0 to 6. For part two, would you advise continuing to work with them or to work in a larger scale practice, different scale, different placement sort of thing? So I think one thing that I've always been very kind of focused on is getting a range of experience, and it's something that I kind of ask people to think about. So in my part one, I've worked for a mid-size practice doing sort of schools and churches and stuff. My part two, I worked with a sort of micro practice or a startup that was doing sort of passive houses and stuff. And then after part three, I came to Squires, which is 150 people sort of thing. So I think whatever you do, it's about making a choice. And do you want to be a small part of something big, or do you want to be a big part of something small? Working in a 2-person practice, you are going to be in on everything. Your experience will be nuts and bolts and management and stuff, but it might be of a house. It might be a small thing. You are a massive part of a smaller thing. At our practice, multi-million projects, they take 5 years to do. You will be a small part of a very big thing. It's and similarly, if you went to work for Foster's or someone massive, you might be working on a glamorous international project that you never go to visit, and you might only be designing the toilets. It's about understanding the parameters. Architecture is big and complicated and takes a long time. So I think it's very important to ask yourself those sorts of questions. What sort of experience do you want? Is it about getting a rounded experience? Early in your career, you have the opportunity to have that sort of rounded experience. Any experience is kind of good. Just getting an experience is kind of positive. But the older you get, you then have to be sort of more determined about what things interest you, and you will learn more about yourself, as you go. And based on your experiences, good or bad, you will react to them. So I think it's just about being intentional, I suppose.
To add to that, I went, so from my own experience, I went for the small practice route for the more hands-on experience. And I must admit that I went to a talk recently in Leicester, and a lady from Zaha gave a presentation of the Oppo headquarters. It was in a city in China, and I must admit I was like, wow, I would have loved to have the opportunity to just see a project of that size at a practice that size. So I would say, if you're young enough, try and go for the bigger firm. You hear things about them taking advantage of you and stuff like that. I don't know whether that's true. I haven't got hands-on experience, but I would even say, bear with it for 12 months to just see behind the curtain of one of these star architect firms. That's one thing I do regret a little bit, that I didn't see behind the curtain of one of those, your Fosters, your Zahas. I would recommend at least 12 months at one of them, and then maybe go the other way with it.
Yeah, and just to add to that as well, I would definitely recommend that you spend some time at a large firm, because the benefit of that could actually help you in the long run, when you're then looking for new opportunities, looking for new jobs, because that firm, whether big or small, they'll look at your CV, they'll look at your past experiences, and if they can see that you've worked at a large firm, maybe a large firm that's known, it might actually put you in a better position for getting that job. So if you can get that on your CV, that experience on your CV, the benefit of it can help you in the future.
Spot on. So no one ask any more questions now, because I don't know how we're going to get through them all. So if I can just rattle through a couple. So someone's asked, interested to hear your motivation for presenting at this webinar. I'm guessing that means us. Is that like literally like what's our motivation? My motivation was because I actually felt sorry for the amount of people that were asking for advice, and I just thought, let's just try and pull something together to to help people genuinely. Like, I always say to people, yes, we've got a business there that is trying to sell products and courses and all that sort of stuff. But believe me, it's rooted in giving a shit about people, doing better and lifting the profession. I'm sick and tired of hearing people moan about it and trying to do something about it. Photo of yourself on CV. Oh, I must admit, this is a tricky one. I got heavily criticised online. The downfall of having a big following. I got criticised for suggesting that people hand their CV in, and call me naive. I didn't see the problem, but
I think I was one of the people criticising.
Was you? Look, I think it's a healthy thing to discuss. Really, it is a topic at the minute, isn't it? About is a person going to be judged by that photo? Call me naive. I wouldn't judge. That's what I'm trying to get at. But I do understand that it can be an issue. So go on, Chris. You mentioned about you were critical of that concept. Why? And
No,
maybe you can answer that.
I personally don't buy the fact of people knocking on your door and wanting to sit down face to face, sort of thing. I think that's a bit kind of naive. Well, maybe it's based on my experience and the size of the practice. You wouldn't get past the reception. Maybe it's different with a smaller practice. I think just on the photo thing, I think if we're all going to this effort of building a personal brand and promoting ourselves and having like Sana said about, the memorable orange color behind our background sort of thing. Like, what's the point of going to all this effort and then you just hide yourself on the CV? It seems quite archaic to me. I would say, just embrace it and you are who you are, and it's not. It brings the personality.
I have, had a headshot in my CV in the past. I would actually go down the approach that Thomas has done and actually showcase your work on your CV, and maybe also in your portfolio. Well, you're going to show your work in your portfolio, but on your CV anyway, I would say maybe focus on your work rather than the portrait.
So you would advise against it?
Against the
photo, yes, yeah. So well, I suppose personal preference. The reason why I was a little hesitant myself is, we have employed through recruiters in the past, and they were always adamant that they could only tell us very, very limited details about the person in terms of their appearance, their beliefs. I found it strange personally, but it is an issue, I suppose, and yeah, maybe to just take that out the equation, I suppose. They say even in design, they say don't use too bold of a colour because it raises the debate of whether a person likes red or green or what have you. So that's why every architect goes with grey to avoid that debate. So I suppose it takes it out the equation. But if I can be frank, if the person's judging you on your appearance, you don't want to work for them. Should there be a limited word count in the portfolio, both mini and full? Yes. I can't recommend the word count specifically, but image heavy. Simple as that. Image heavy. We're rubbish readers. We're very good at visual. So just really limit the word count. Just don't go too heavy. Definitely image heavy. First job. Is it hard to find your first job as a graduate in the UK? Yes, it is. From my experience in Liverpool, it's a reasonable sized city. There are some really big practices here, and I'm not aware of many employing. I must admit, so it is tricky, and that's why I wanted Irina on the call, because I wanted that international perspective. That I think if you're struggling in the UK and you feel a little stuck, and all the lovely advice that you've had today, if that doesn't work, I would say try and go abroad, and I would recommend a Scandinavian country to really up your game on sustainability and all that sort of stuff. Sana, if you would, someone's asked for a recommendation on how you use LinkedIn. A recommendation. How do you teach that? Do you teach that yourself?
I guess I do in a way. I offer like personal brand coaching, which is heavily focused on how you make use of LinkedIn. But I mean, there are no kind of like courses or things out there. I think it's just about posting and yeah, making sure that your profile is complete, and seeing what other people are doing is also quite nice, because outside of architecture, there's a lot of really cool creators. People have built like multi-million-dollar businesses on LinkedIn. So, I mean, I think it's a really good opportunity to just learn. A lot of people also kind of get stuck at the content format on LinkedIn. And as opposed to Instagram, it's not visual heavy. So text-based posts are really, really helpful and valuable. And if you do learn to write really well and, you know, improve your skills at copywriting, it can actually change the game a lot, because it kind of leads into the whole like storytelling and narrative thing as well. So if you can get your ideas across coherently and explain your projects without having to like write chunks of paragraphs, then I do think that's kind of something you can begin to learn by just seeing what's already out there.
I saw one of your posts earlier, and I did wonder, you have the same sort of 4 or 5 lines at the base of every post, don't you?
Yep.
Is that a template you've set up, or is that just something you copy and paste in every time?
It is the template that I kind of like I've built into my Notion. So every time I do write a post, it's already there. But I have different sort of like variations from it, but it's just mainly for me as a creator to kind of connect with other students and people who are interested in personal branding. But you can do a similar thing even if you are a student or graduate, where it's kind of like, hey, connect with me. I talk about X, Y, and Z, and kind of outline those like really unique skills and interests that you have. So again, it just kind of like circles back whatever you're talking about to then get someone to engage with you and connect with you.
Spot on. Certain time frame to apply for a part 1. It's never too early, in my opinion. We're not. I'll be interested in Samuel and Chris's opinion on this as well. We're not mega precious on the actual grade. We're more precious on the body of work that we see. So we see a fear of people applying at this point in time, and we've deliberately timed this because we think now is the right time. People are fearful of applying now because they're not 100% sure of what grade they're going to get. So I wouldn't let that bog you down. If your work's good enough, it'll be good enough to apply.
Sorry, just dive in quickly. I think really important thing though with students is that obviously their portfolios at this point aren't complete for the year. So for me personally, I didn't want to apply for any jobs until I had a complete portfolio of work that I could submit and display. So for example, if I was a master's student in second year, the only work that I have to show is either my first year work or the previous month's work, for example, and I wouldn't have anything put together. So how would you, kind of just from like an interesting question point of view, how would you advise a student to go around that if they haven't got a completed portfolio, and what would you encourage them to do?
Yeah.
I mean, in the past, I've always waited until I've sort of finished that semester, especially if you're looking for your first part 1 job, because you know most companies are going to be hiring for part 1 architectural assistants. So if you haven't finished, if you're halfway through the degree, the portfolio that you have is going to be competing with other people that finished their degree. Also, in your part 1, your best work is going to come most likely in that final semester, in that last project. And in your portfolio, you want to showcase your best work. So I would say that the majority of your portfolio should kind of be built after you finished, right? But you can start preparing your portfolio before you finish. So, you know, you could decide on the formatting, you can decide on the layout you're going to use, and, you know, just have placeholders in the portfolio, you know, so that then when you finish your final project or whatever it is, you're not starting from scratch to create a portfolio. You can then, you know, bring in those images and fill the gaps and then apply. That's what I would say.
And I think Chris and Sana touched on this other topic with warming people up as well. So maybe with practices start to engage now. Then at least, yeah, I think it's a fair point to You don't want to show something that's rubbish, which could be great in a few months. Don't yeah, so that's a great point. Maybe start warming people up. Yeah, speaking to people online. I liked Sana's suggestion of picking up the phone and having little discussions. I think that's great. Because now is the quieter time, so this is the best time to grab people's attention. But I think it's a fair point that if you're worried that you'll ruin your first impression, then maybe just get that engagement in now.
Can I just add to that? I feel kind of differently. I think you should definitely start sending out your portfolio, even if you haven't completed your final year, just because, like you said, Adam, if you start applying now, you might catch the eye of a potential employer, and it's always better to, I guess, for me anyway, start applying as early as possible, because then you miss that whole crowd of all of the other applicants and students who are then applying right after they graduate. So you almost get into their like bubble early on. And when it comes to the actual work that you're showing in your portfolio, like there's so many other things throughout the project, whether it's like sketches, conceptual work, even stuff like test renders. I've put that in my portfolio before, and it kind of does the job because you're demonstrating that you do have the necessary skills. So even if you don't have like the shiny sort of finished renders and things, I still think it's definitely worth putting together your portfolio and at least maybe even posting about your work consistently to show like that record of what you've been up to for the past few months. So I feel like there are ways to kind of put yourself at an advantage in that sense.
What happens if you haven't finished your degree and you make that application and they like your work? You can't start until you finish that year. And then at the same time, employers as well, they might want to actually wait until people are finished, because they know that that's when the most of people are going to, have graduated and start applying. So they might also not feel that, they also want to also check, be aware of the other people out there as well. But at the same time, I get your point at the same time.
It's a tricky one.
I also feel like I agree with Sana. Sorry. So in a way that's actually applications, you will need a practice in that as well. I mean, more you're applying, more you're compiling your portfolio, redoing it again and again, or rewriting your cover letter, whatever, it will get better with the time and your practice. So earlier you start, maybe, it might get better.
And there's also a thing of making pre-agreements. So when you've had an interview, say 3 months before you graduate, you can agree, okay, when I graduate, I'm going to start working. So there's also that thing where when you connect with people early on in the stages and you get in contact with them, say around this time of the year, you might then agree to say, yeah, okay, I'll start in July, for example. So there is also that opportunity. Obviously, it completely depends on the practice. It depends what the practice are looking for. It depends who they're looking for, when they want them to start. Some people might need someone immediately for a project that's just come in, for example. So it's completely circumstantial, but I think getting in early, building those connections early, and all of these things that everyone has said, I think are really, really important.
Spot on. By the way, as well, if I can just say, because I think everyone's been mega generous with the time, we'll cut it at 8:30. I think that's is that okay for everyone? Yeah, good. Because we could run and run here. If we don't answer any questions, reach out. Literally everyone here. When I asked them would they jump on this, there was no hesitation. So everyone's very helpful. Reach out to everyone. Everyone will receive an email after the event as well with everyone's details on. So don't everyone, you'll still get a chance afterwards. And I've just replied saying it is being recorded and it will go on our YouTube channel. Happy for everyone else to put it on all their stuff as well. So there'll be plenty of opportunity to look back as well. I noticed a couple of quick ones. Is it good to say?
I just want to cover 2 Revit ones.
Oh, go on.
So just going back to the point about the relevance of Revit skills, are they so important for Part 1 graduates versus more so the later stages? So I think in our practice and lots of London-based practices, even early stage information is produced in Revit. I mean, obviously there's hand sketching and things like that. So yes, I think it is relevant, and yes, as I said, get the bases covered. probably not quite as relevant for smaller practices. And then the second one was about, are there CAD tests becoming more common in application processes, timed Revit tests? So it's not part of the application process, but once we offer somebody a job, there is a conditional Revit test as part of our employment process. So someone, does that, and typically it's okay. And yeah, I know other large practices work in the same way. So
yeah, well, then rattled a couple off there. A big topic is how to avoid overburn, burn out, what have you. The way I get around it is just allocating time. It's just, I have a very simple. I need to watch your video, Sana, on Notion actually. I only use Excel, and I just block my time out, and I never work on more than one project per day. So I manage about 4 to 5 projects at any one time, and I would explode if I had to try and transition from all the stuff that's involved in one project to the other within a day. So try and block out. So for practice, never work on more than one project per day. If it's university, try and not do any more than one core task per day. And finished is better than perfect. You can draw something forever. So just try and get that mentality of, give yourself a time frame to do it in, and I absolutely assure you you will do it to an acceptable standard in that time frame, as long as it's reasonable, of course. Try and get into that attitude of getting it finished rather than constantly trying to perfect it. I think that, it's my opinion anyway. If anyone wants to chip in on burnout, because it's a massive topic.
I think just in regards to like the second part of that question, like being assertive in a practice. So if you are sort of like on a junior level, you're a part 1, part 2, and you have a lot of workload and you're not really sure how to kind of communicate that, I think it always helps to just speak to either your line manager, your boss, whoever's kind of like in charge of giving you the tasks. And you shouldn't really feel, I guess, like scared or anything to speak to them about that sort of thing, because I feel like a lot of the time we kind of think, oh yeah, we just have to suck it up and then do the work and stay past your hours and stuff. But it's really not the case. I think it's just a matter of being really honest about the capacity you have and how much work you can realistically complete in the time that you're given, because that's just going to help the whole team overall. And yeah, just be as realistic as possible for the project, because yeah, your sort of like mental being matters more than the project deadlines, I suppose.
Just to add to that quickly, it's also key to learn when to say no, because I feel like as a part 1 or as someone who's new to the industry, all you want to do is say yes, that's fine, yeah, I'll do that, and then you end up taking on so much stuff that it becomes overwhelming and you burn out. It's the same in many other industries. And I think just learning when to say no is just crucial. And I think just being aware, like what Sana said, being aware of your mental well-being, make sure you're not overwhelming yourself, not taking too much on board, because at the end of the day, you need to have a life as well. And to make sure that the practice doesn't take advantage of you is key.
And there are practices out there. This is the drum I'm trying to bang, is that there are practices out there that will hear you. On what Thomas has said there are practices out there that will hear you. Again, all I would say is the massive practices that maybe might abuse your time a little bit, I would just take a philosophical stance on that you're trying to absorb as much as you can from them and get it on your CV, and if you're not enjoying it there, move on. But believe me, there are a lot of great practices out there that do care about you, and they will hear you on that pushback. Mateus has said, is it good to say directly about the type of projects you want to work with? Yes, it is. I like that. I like people to specialise in certain areas. But it depends on the type of practice. If you come to us and you wanted to work on a hospital, you'd have no chance. So do that research initially, and then yes, I would actually admire that confidence that if you want to work on high end. So with us, it could be high end residential. It could be, we do a bit of affordable housing, hotels, things like that. If you come to us and say, I'd absolutely love to work on that, and again, I think that brings in a bit of the specifics I was mentioning earlier. So yeah, I would definitely encourage that. There's one here that caught my eye. There's how do you balance architecture and content creation? I'm sure everyone can sympathise with that. And one more profitable than the other is an interesting one, because in my experience, well, we run a practice, so I suppose it's a slightly different perspective, but architecture is more profitable, but it's harder. So in terms of the it's higher stakes, you know what I mean? More's at stake, more goes into it. Hard is probably the wrong way of putting it, because it's bloody hard building the course. But I would say that it just depends on what you focus on. If you spent more time on the architecture, you would make that more profitable. So I would just say it is a balancing act. And again, I've said it a few times, it's about blocking your time, but I would encourage you to do it, because it opens up a whole new avenue of way the way you look at things. As I say, we've now started bringing video into our presentations, so I would absolutely encourage you to do it, but you can make anything as profitable as you want.
Just to add to that, I think with content creation, there's so many intricacies, and there's so many people that you're competing with. It's very difficult, and it takes a lot of time, commitment, effort. And I feel like if you go into content creation with the mentality that you want to make it profitable and that you want to make money, then I think you're in it for the wrong reasons. Personally, from my experience, I didn't earn a penny for 4 years, and I made 3 videos a week, purely down to the fact that I just enjoyed making content and I had a passion for it. And if you don't have that passion or interest in it, and you're only in it for the money, you'll be out quick, because you'll realize, okay, I've got to commit a lot of time to this. I'm going to have to put a lot of sacrifice into this, and I might not earn anything for years to come. So I think it all depends on your approach when it comes to making content. And of course, you can do it alongside architecture, like what we all do. You don't have to fully commit into something that you're unsure about, or you're not sure if it's going to be profitable. Maybe the best thing to do is to build up your personal brand or your content creation alongside earning something, so then you don't have the pressure of making it profitable, and you can kind of enjoy it more, which I think is something that I've done for a long period of time. So yeah, don't go into content if you want to make money, because I think that's the wrong mentality to have, personally.
I saw a nice question. Is it better to specialize in one skill or be generally good at most of the skills in architecture? And please, Adam and Chris, if I'm going to be wrong, just tell me. But I think that this depends a lot on the moment of the time, and the scale of the offices. What I mean by that is that basically in the beginning, maybe it's better to be quite good in many skills, let's say, because you're going to be an all-rounder in the beginning when you start to get this first job, and then with the time and when you understand what you like more, where you're specific, you will narrow down with your skills. And also it might depend on the scale of the office. Let's say maybe smaller practices will prefer you to be to be hands-on on everything, basically starting from the sketch design and finishing with the detailing and technical drawings. And in bigger practices, you will have more specific, let's say, niche, and maybe that will work another way for you. That's what I think.
Was that the question about knowing everything or a specific? Was that in the Q&A, or was it down the side?
Yes, it is in Q&A, anonymous.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Also, to add to that, I think you need to be competent, and you need to be sort of proficient in a wide range of things when you're younger. But I think the thing that's going to make you stand out is that one bit of skill that you're kind of a bit more skilled at. And that's the thing that's going to grab the attention of a potential employer. So, for example, we want you to be able to use Photoshop well, use CAD skills, do all of these things. But if we can clearly see that you're special at CGI in your application, you want to highlight that, because then we're going to see that, we're going to see the talent that you have in that particular area. And then when you come into work, you know, we can maybe trust you more in, you know, producing that visual, or, you know, producing that 3D model, you know, 3D printed model. So I guess what I'm trying to say is you kind of do want to be all-rounder. You don't need to be great at everything, but the thing that would, you know, make you stand out is that one special sort of skill, or it could be a couple of special skills.
Spot on. I've seen a few. Well, I can't believe the amount of the range of nationalities. What I would say is, I say there's a few on transitioning into the UK from other countries. We are working on something in the background. It's massive. It might take us a little while, but we are trying to work on something with the RIBA to help with that transition into the UK. I've got a buddy who's Nigerian born, and he has this story of his struggle in transitioning to becoming a qualified architect in the UK, even though he was qualified in Nigeria. And he believes that our platform can be a vehicle to help with that transition, and he is an RIBA counsellor, so it doesn't hurt having that route in. So there's a lot of international questions here that what I'd encourage you to do is please follow up in a couple of months with myself and everyone here. I think we will have more on that. So I hope that helps with. We've got a question from Brenda. There's a few anonymous ones. There's the RIBA accreditation is the only globally recognised one, and we are trying our best. We haven't got through to the RIBA properly yet, but we are trying our best with helping with that transition, and we are speaking to the right people. I can assure you of that. Is it a plus no in programming? That's a strange question. I've got no idea. I've never needed a programmer in my practice. Could be interesting though. I mentioned tech, innovation. You know, if you could program Revit to do me drawings for me, that'd be cool.
Probably more so of like parametric modeling in Rhino.
Yeah,
kind of stuff.
Yeah, thanks.
So, yeah.
Yeah, it is. It is handy. Yeah, no harm in that. While we're on that, you know, if someone's good at Revit but doesn't know ArchiCAD and Vectorworks, would the firm consider hiring them? I think so. What about the other way around, Chris? You guys are Revit, and I love the London perspective, by the way, as well. What if the other way around? What if they knew ArchiCAD? Would you still consider them?
Yeah, I think it's kind of a base level understanding of how the software works. It's how you input information, how you model things. You know, it's a different badge on the tin sort of thing, but it's the same sort of thought process and ideas. And if someone's geared up in one type of software, it's not going to take them very long to understand where the toolbars are and the other things are in a different piece of software. So I think that's a much lower barrier for entry.
Absolutely. Couldn't put it better myself. As long as you're kind of BIM proficient, I think they're transferable, aren't they? Spot on. Just try to rattle through as many as I can before we... second year students, is there anything you'd recommend doing at this stage? Personally, no. I think, you know, we had a little difference in opinion in terms of you know, as you're coming to the end of your degree. So other than some of the topics around bolstering again, my opinion, I'd love people to jump in, but other than the things around bolstering your presentation, again, definitely when you see the playback, go back to Thomas's one with that full suite. There's nothing stopping you building that suite up now. But I would suggest that if someone approached me as a second year for employment, I don't know, but it's not a bad time between years though. Between second year and third year, it's not a bad time to maybe get a couple of weeks work experience. That's a good way in. You know, you get a few internships under your belt during those early years.
Yeah, I get a lot of students asking me about, you know, kind of, you know, getting an internship at the end of, you know, my second year and stuff. And I think the answer I give more often than not now is actually to use that time upgrading your skills, basically. You know, if I could go back in time in my second year and I had a platform like ArchAdemia I'll be on there in my summers and I'll spend time on their courses, improving my skills, improving my ability, because not only would that improve my, my ability going into my final year, but it also means that the quality of work will, I'll level up my quality of work. So then when it comes to applying at the end of third year, I'm in the best position possible in terms of quality of work and quality of your portfolio. So definitely look to how you can improve your skills and improve your ability. I think is the number one thing whilst you're still studying.
I think.
Oh, go on.
Sorry.
Go on.
I was going to say, I think it's a bit of both, learning and building your skill set, but also getting some experience under your belt is crucial. I worked for 2 practices during my undergraduate, and it really helped me shape what the architecture practice was really like, because obviously you go through architecture school, it's quite disconnected from practice. You come out of architecture school and then you're kind of shocked with what it's like going into practice. Whereas if you can get just a couple of weeks of experience under your belt during the summer, just to contextualize what it's going to be like when you come out, or to learn the type of softwares that you need to learn in practice, in a practice environment, I think is crucial and really helpful to do.
But then I think, Adam as well, like, ArchAdemia, and the point about ArchAdemia, it's education, but it's not education purely from like an academic perspective. It's very much practical education at the same time. So yeah, you can, learn your skills how to use Photoshop and stuff like that. But there are also things that will teach you real life design and real life work, and I think that, I'm sure, Adam, correct me if I'm wrong, but they sort of like certificates and stuff like that that you can get at the end of a.
Yeah, you saved me for my last 5 minutes. Yeah, nice one.
Sorry, on course.
No, but yeah, no.
So yeah, things like that.
There's certificates, there's evidence, all that sort of stuff, and you are right. It's about the core of it is about the transition into practice. That relevance. You're spot on. Honestly, if I had it when I was younger, I would have been a member. Genuinely.
But yeah, absolutely. If you can get work experience, that's fantastic. But I would say don't stress too much, and make that the main thing to do in the summer, for example.
I like Tom's suggestion of like the environment, the context. It's very different. It is very different to the university studio. One thing we've not mentioned before we wrap up is again from personal experience, I was failing miserably in second year. And the thing that got me up to a level in third year was actually reading. We're all very techie here, and we're using Zoom and everything, but actually one of the books that changed my life was Tadao Ando's Complete Works. It was just amazing. I've read the whole thing, the Taschen thing that's like that, and it wasn't just the pretty pictures and stuff, and the sketches. It was the way he described his projects and his approach to projects, and to just come into university in the third year and go, and my whole language changed, my whole vocabulary changed as well. So if you're not getting work experience and you're not learning Rhino or what have you, then read. I would absolutely encourage you to read. It's so important, and there are things in books that still aren't being said online, so I'd encourage you to do that as well. Okay, should we wrap it up there? We've been going for a while, haven't we? To be fair, it's going to be a very intimidating YouTube video, this. But listen, thanks so much for everyone joining, and thanks to you guys for helping me with this session as well. It wouldn't have been a fraction of the presentation if it weren't for the other panelists. So thank you so much for that. So someone's asked there, what's the book name? Tadao Ando Complete Works. My favourite architect, for what it's worth. So as a little heads up to everyone, just to wrap us up, it's been recorded. Hopefully, it's going to be shared on our YouTube channel, but again, comfortable for everyone else if they've got that platform to share it on theirs as well. Genuinely want as many people to see this as possible, because hopefully we're trying to level the playing field for as many people as possible, and as part of this process, we will follow up with a little email, probably on Tuesday now, with a little bit, I must admit, a little bit more about ArchAdemia, but I will share everyone else's contact details as well, because every one of us here has got a unique thing to offer, and I would encourage you speak to everyone separately. You know, Chris does mentoring sessions, Sana's got the studio program, Tom's got some amazing courses, Sam's got some great products. So I would encourage you to really engage with everyone, and honestly, the more you can absorb, the better you'll be. So yeah, thanks again. Does anyone else want to have any little closing remarks?
Just good luck.
Yeah, to everyone, and also Adam as well for putting this together. It's been a pleasure.
Yeah, cheers, Adam.
Yeah, thanks a lot, man.
Thank you, Adam.
Thank you so much.
Good stuff. Nice one.
And thanks for everyone watching.
Yeah, and the engagements as well. Brilliant. All right then. Cheers. See everyone soon.
See you guys.
See you guys.
Okay.
Bye bye.
Have a nice Easter.
And you.